Hello, everyone. Welcome to our really special webinar today. I am so thrilled to be here. I'm going to let all of you come on in. I know you're coming from all different places, not just around the world, but around the internet. We've got YouTube represented here. We are live streaming on LinkedIn and we're live streaming on Facebook. So we've got a lot of places. And Jenny, you win the award because we're doing intros. That's something that I always love to do at the beginning of these sessions. So go ahead and drop in the chat where you're tuning in from. And as a little bonus, if you want, tell us what the weather's like. It's always fun to see. What does it look like right outside your window right now? We'd love to hear it. So go ahead and drop that in the chat. And as we get started, I want to introduce you all a little bit to not just what we're talking about today, but also who we are for those of you who are new to Wonderful and what this is all about. So for any of you who are new to our Wonderful community, my name is Beth Santos. I'm founder and CEO of Wonderful. We are an international community of women who love to travel. We started as a blog in 2009 and over the years have developed into a really incredible international community. We have a 24/7 app with a membership program where you can meet women all around the world and tap into local knowledge, local support, meet somebody for a cup of coffee whenever you travel somewhere. We have local hubs that do events in dozens of cities around the world. We run, here, hold on, I'll show you some more stuff. We run some really awesome conferences. The WITS Travel Creator Summit is one of our biggest events that we run every year for 500 travel content creators. We also run the Bessie Awards, which honors women of impact in travel. And we actually put on a festival a couple of years ago called Wanderfest that we're hoping to bring back again in the near future. But really, the whole goal for us is to help connect and support women who are traveling alone, women who want to travel with each other. We have trips that we do together, group experiences. We have global meetups where we all kind of descend on a city together. It's really fun and a really engaging community. And I see the comments coming in now too. I saw like 72 and sunny in Atlanta. I saw San Francisco represented. Texas is in the house. Thank you all for being here. Keep on dropping in the chat where you are, what it's like outside. And I want to keep you all talking throughout this session because this is, I know it feels like a live stream and you're just kind of like watching me talk, but this is as interactive of a live stream as you're going to get. I want to hear questions. I want to hear insights. I want to hear about your experiences, what you've been seeing around the world, whether you've traveled a lot by yourself, whether you've never traveled before. Today, we are talking all about solo travel. And oh yeah, by the way, this is a little link. You'll get this in your email as well. If you do want to join the Wonderful community, we'd love to have you be part of it. It's $9 a month. It's super cheap. Sheswonderful.com/join. And you can get access to all of the women around the world that are part of our network. We have over 3,000 women in our network now. And this is a photo of them meeting up in Mexico City last year, which was super, super fun. All right, so let's move into our key conversation today. So I mentioned we're talking solo travel, not just solo travel, but we're talking about how solo travel isn't spooky. Yes, we've got Halloween references in here as we're gearing up in North America for our holiday next week, because you know what? A lot of people think that it is. A lot of people are really worried about this concept of traveling alone. And luckily, we have a real expert who's going to be joining us. So before I bring her in, what I want to do is give you all a little bit of bragging points about who she is. So Alexa West is founder and CEO of the Solo Girls Travel Guide. She's a multiple best-selling travel author and hotel reviewer. In 2011, she sat on her bedroom floor, packed her life into a backpack, got on a one-way flight with just $200 in her pocket. She turned that $200 into over 10 years of full-time travel. She went from budget backpacker to solo female travel expert, and now she teaches thousands of women how to travel alone and make money from anywhere. So she's got this new book, which I'll show you right here because I have it. We're going to be talking all about it today. It's called The One-Way Ticket Plan, Find and Fund Your Purpose While Traveling the World. She is on a mission to show women that they can safely live, travel, and work abroad without a boyfriend or a big bank account. And we're so thrilled to have her today. Alexa, welcome to the conversation.
Good morning. Hi.
Oh my gosh. Of course, like I just set off my own Alexa because
No, I hate
sometimes I
that
listen to you.
all the time. Hey Alexa is like, it like haunts my dreams now.
I know. She was just like, I don't know what you're saying.
Oh
I was
my
like, oh God,
God.
you're both talking to me at once. It's so great to have you. And I want to, before we dig into our conversation, I just want to flip on one slide over because everyone who's watching this right now, you all have a chance to win a copy of Ms. A's book, The Woman Who Shall Not Be Named in This Room Until I Unplug the Other One.
I know.
It is so good. I'm so excited to talk about it. And this is how you win. Drop any comment, as many comments as you want in the chat throughout our conversation. At the end of our conversation, we're going to do a random number generator. We're going to pick one of you. You're going to win a copy of this book. We'll ship it out to you today. So really exciting. And go ahead and do that. And at the end, we'll do the giveaway. But it's so great to see you. Thanks for being here.
Thanks for having me. I'm like such a fan of you. So this is like a nice little moment for me
The feeling is mutual. Aw. Well, and so that everyone can get a little bit more of your story, take us through like this $200 budget backpacker to solo travel expert. How did you get to this point? Tell us about yourself.
It was such an accident, but like a beautiful accident. Um, my story starts as most, tragic stories of love. I was in college and I, was one of those girls that I didn't know exactly what I wanted to do in life because, I'm like 18, 19, 20, and that's pretty normal. But I was in college and I was dating this guy. I really liked him. And I was like, that's what I'm gonna do. Like my mom taught me, like, find a good man, settle down, and like that was as high as she dreamed for me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I found him, I loved him. I was like, I'm gonna marry this guy, like I'm, 20 years old. I definitely know that that's the one I want to be with. And then he did me like the greatest favor of all, and he broke up with me. And I cried for like a day, like my whole life came crashing down. But when tragedy hits, sometimes when the tears, fade away, your intuition knows exactly what to do.
Mm.
So I had remembered an office that I had walked by on campus at UW here in Seattle. It was office for the Peace Corps, which is an American volunteer organization. And I was like, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to leave. I'm going to leave the country. I'm going to just take my breakup and just leave the country. And that's what I did. So I didn't have a lot of money, but the Peace Corps paid for that one-way ticket. And they paid for, my insurance and my housing. And that's what I did. I jumped on a plane, left the country, and then it kind of just kept going from there. After the Peace Corps, I still just wasn't ready to go home. So that went into teaching English in South Korea. That turned into backpacking. That turned into teaching in Taiwan. So I just kind of, it just rolled.
Wow, that's really cool. Did you expect that for yourself when you first went? Like, had you traveled a lot before? Maybe not solo, but like, did
No,
you have an inkling that this might happen or?
not at all. So something that I haven't really been open with until I wrote this book was that I come from a single parent household, raised by a single mom who struggled to pay the bills. Travel was not a luxury, or at least travel wasn't something we did because it seemed like a luxury, right? Um, my mom again, like she taught me like security is what you're going for. I never dreamed that I would be traveling. I never dreamed. But what I found was that traveling was my way out of struggling, which seems very backwards, but as I kept traveling, I realized like this is my financial freedom rather than going home. So it was kind of like completely backwards to what I was taught. But no, I had no idea. I had no idea. All I knew was that I wanted to go. I had, as a child that came from a house with not a lot of love, I found that I had so much love to give. And I just wanted to travel and give that. Like I just felt like I had so much to give. And I think that is, I'd say financial hardship kept me from going home and my heart kept me going. So it was kind of just happened.
I love that. Well, and I think that you're touching on so many really important things. Like the first one being that I cannot say, enough how, or too much even, how much those, especially those first solo experiences, like they really do have an impact on you. Whether, 90% of the time, I hope that means good impact, although, it's not always for everybody. Some people don't love to travel alone. But I think what you realize is that you are with yourself, like fully and completely with yourself for the first time, like pulled out of any context of home, out of, relationships, out of friendships. Like you are with who you are. And I think in the context of traveling the world, that gives you so many insights about like, who do I want to be? How, what am I happy about with myself? What am I not happy about? What do I want to change? So I think that I think it's like really wild how that really does happen, and how much I really encourage it for so many people to go through that experience.
Same. My best friend Amelia is watching from Spain, so hi, Emmy.
Oh
But I write about Emmy in my book a lot. Yeah, but Emmy always says travel is a mirror. And
yeah.
when you go abroad and you're by yourself, all you have is to look at you. And you see yourself in a different light, and you don't have your usual coping mechanisms to fall back on. You don't have the people that you would usually turn to. And I think pre-travel, that sounds really scary. But when you're actually out and about, it's very empowering. You realize like I have all the tools I need right here. And you realize how capable you are when you're out on your own.
But I think you also realize too how doable it actually is, and I want to kind of move into like more of a financial conversation. Oh, there, I think that's your friend who's commenting right now. Who, because you mentioned this, how, we see travel as a privilege and a luxury, and it absolutely is in so many ways. There are people around the world that will never be able to afford to travel, and it's very fortunate that, that we can. But also, it doesn't have to be as expensive as we kind of typically think. I think a lot of times, I know, like I traveled or was talking about travel with a friend once, and the way she travels is like she eats out every meal. She stays at really nice hotels. And so in her mind, travel is an unaffordable thing, versus I'm like, you could also shop at the grocery store and take the bus,
Yeah.
and like, and it's so different. So I'd love to hear more about, your book is not just about traveling alone. It's all about like, also about funding that purpose and making it financially accessible. Tell me more about like how you were able to manage so many years of traveling alone from a financial perspective, having not come from that level of financial comfort.
Yeah. Well, you just touched on it perfectly. So there is such a difference between vacationing and
Mm,
traveling. So if you're
yeah.
vacationing, maybe you don't have as much time and maybe you're going, straight to a resort and you probably have a rolly suitcase. So you're planning to just rely on taxis and in a vacation, you have a bucket list, like if I'm going to Costa Rica, maybe I have this bucket list for this amount of time. So I'm going to shell out that money to go on that waterfall tour and that like conservation experience. But when you're traveling, you
Yeah.
are kind of diving a little bit deeper.
Yeah.
So a lot of my favorite travels are in Southeast Asia. It's very affordable.
Mhm.
And that's why I stayed in Southeast Asia for 10 years because you can just afford it. Um, Throwing on a backpack means that you can walk your butt everywhere. Um, Not looking for resorts means that you're staying in more of homestays and then you're exposed to street food and the local tips. And there is in spending, there is a choice. Sometimes I do like a fancy resort and a taxi, but sometimes I have my intention of like, I have $1,000 for a month and I'm going to travel. And I love traveling on a budget.
Yeah.
It puts you in so many experiences with local people or other travelers that you might not get if you're in a fancy resort. So that's one main way is taking your mindset from vacation to travel. And then the other ways, I just found so many programs to fund my travels. Like teaching funded it, volunteering. I worked as a barefoot bartender in Cambodia for so long, where I was the receptionist, I was the house cleaner, I was the waitress, and I stayed there for free on this gorgeous island. And they paid me, they gave me housing. Um, so there's all these ways, and one of my favorite ways that I think is the most approachable for anyone is house sitting. So I've been house sitting all around the world. House sitting in Costa Rica, in Mexico, Thailand, and even in Seattle. Um, I mean, I house sat for like 6 months straight, so I didn't pay rent for 6 months straight living in these beautiful places. So in my book, I lay all these out. There are so many ways to turn your travel life into a more affordable, approachable thing. Because I'm certainly not going to be spending money on resorts every time I travel. I travel all the time, but I don't always pay for it.
Yeah. And I think I love that you said so explicitly, like that you love traveling on a budget, because I think so many people think of that as a negative, like, oh, I don't have enough money, so therefore I am forced to travel in this way that is on a budget. But you're right, like it does two things. I think one is it forces you to be creative, which means you're not just like jumping in a cab, and thinking like, okay, I'm going from point A to point B, I'm getting in a cab and whatever. Like you're forced to sort of think differently. But also I think that in that way, you start to live more like a local, which is kind of the point of a lot of parts of travel anyway, is like when I'm living in my own house, I'm not staying at a 5-star resort and taking taxis everywhere and eating out for really nice meals, But I think to your point, like, yes, you can still have those experiences from time to time. Like if there's something you've always wanted to do, absolutely, you should go and do it. But it can be so rewarding to just embrace kind of the local lifestyle. And that goes hand in hand with being on a budget.
Yeah. Some of my favorite memories of traveling actually are like taking my backpack, like you bond so much with your backpack, and like sleeping on a bus station floor with a travel partner. And just like laughing and being like how much money do we have? Like that like can of Coke is like $1. God, that's such a splurge. Should we do it? Okay. And then we love that can of Coke when we pass it back and forth and are just so in love with it. You like appreciate life's little pleasures.
Yeah.
And it's so beautiful. I talk about this, like there's a beauty in being a broke backpacker.
Yeah.
And me and Emmy, my best friend, who's here, I love talking about her. She and we say that we like to go from the four seasons to the floor seasons. There was we were
Love
we were
it.
in Mexico. We were leaving the Four Seasons and we were being driven in like a black SUV, and the driver probably thought he was taking us to like a luxury place. He took us to like this back road, like little guest house, and we like checked in for a little room, and we loved it. And like we were kind of like, okay, we went from bougie mode to like adventure mode, like there is a difference, and it's so
Yeah.
traveling balanced, I think, is also like a really good way to do it.
And maybe not defining yourself by how you travel in that way. Like I love that you're just like, yeah, we're going to go luxury today. And then tomorrow we're going to go like sleep on an airport floor and you're like, whatever, but just sort of not being so serious about like the experience being some sort of like reflection of who you are.
Yeah. I mean, that's life, right? It's like go with the flow. You learn to be flexible.
Yeah. What advice would you have for somebody? I mean, I know there's a lot of people on this call right now who are coming here either because, and this is what I always find when we talk about solo travel, either the people who are watching, yes, I'm talking to all of you, either you are an experienced solo traveler who's done this a million times, but still cannot help to not talking about it, or you've really never done this before and you're looking for tips. And I think there is a lot of fear that goes into the conversation about traveling alone, especially when it comes to women. You seem like you are just so adventurous and willing to go with it. And have you always been like that? Have you learned how to be that way? Like, and what advice would you give for somebody who's kind of going, oh my God, I can't even imagine, sleeping on a floor somewhere, or like checking into a small bed and breakfast, or, even just buying a plane ticket? What would you say to those people?
Okay, here's my dirty little secret is that I'm afraid of everything. I'm I'm
Aw.
afraid of everything. Like I'm afraid of planes. I'm afraid of boats. Like I'm afraid of everything. Um, and because I am this way, it makes me be afraid of nothing. I don't know if that makes sense at all.
Yeah.
Because I'm just like I have just accepted fear. I've just accepted that fear is a part of the journey.
Yeah.
And I'm definitely more like afraid than 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 my friends. But I am like, this is just gonna be with me always, and I'm gonna do it anyways. Like I'm not gonna let this hold me back. So
Mhm.
I would say just find a book or a travel blogger or a community and put your fear to them, and they're all gonna tell you like feel the fear and do it anyways. Um, and I just say like plan your first, I don't know, plan your first week. Just start planning and it happens. And it happens. Just do it. But I think that pre-travel anxiety is worse than actual travel anxiety. So
Yeah. Just psyching
would you
yourself.
agree?
Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
or
I
like
get
for me, like just like the day before I leave or like when I'm leaving and I'm like, oh God, what am I doing? And then you get there and you're like, it's fine.
it's fine. So it's like, yeah, it's like overthinking it is the scariest part. And then you're there, your feet are on the ground, you have like, I don't know, like a banh mi in your hand, and like you've met a new friend. And you're like, hey, this isn't bad at all.
Yeah.
So psyching yourself out, getting nervous, like I've been doing this for 13 years now, and I still get nervous, but
Yeah.
we do it. Like the world is so solo female travel friendly. It is, we are, women travel solo more than men. Women travel solo for leisure way more than men.
Mhm.
And the world has responded. Like there's female only hostels, there's female meetups, there's female groups, there's tours for females, there's dorms, female only. Like it's fine. It's gonna be fine. That initial fear, welcome it, turn it into excitement. Know that, on every side, every time you overcome fear, you grow a little more.
Mhm.
And you're probably never gonna stop being afraid. Just welcome it. I mean, because I've never stopped being afraid and I just welcome it now.
I love that. And there's the comments are going wild. I just want to go cycle through some of these again because they're great. JLL saying, or JJL, sorry, is saying, just do it. It's amazing. That's the advice. Just do it.
Yeah.
Liz, I love put in do it afraid, which I think is
Yeah.
like a really good summary of what you were talking about, Alexa, which is like you don't have to not be afraid to do it.
Mhm.
Like you
Yeah.
can actually do this while being nervous and scared. And
Yeah,
it can still
totally.
happen and it can dissipate.
Yeah.
I love, let's see, what else do we have? There's some really good tips. Thank you, Jenny. And also for anyone else, if you have really good solo travel tips, drop them into the chat here. We'd love to share them. Smartphones have made solo travel so much easier. I mean, I think a lot of things have really made traveling alone so much easier. You even were just mentioning, Alexa, like the all women hostels that are available or like hotel floors, we're really a lot more
Mhm.
in tune about that than we used to be.
Yeah, we're a lot more connected. I would say, I love that smartphones have made it easier because I started traveling with like a little clicky phone. I'd land in Bangkok and I'd buy like a little clicky phone, and I
Mhm.
would get like one of my favorite memories is like over and over. I would do this in Thailand, get dropped off on Khao San Road, which is the big backpacking road, 3 a.m. because would take a 10-hour bus from the south because I was on a budget. I'd get dropped off and I'd have to just walk around with my clicky phone and like just, go to hotels and be like, do you have room? How much is it? Like with my backpack. So
Mm,
that was super fun. But of course now I always am on booking.com and like finding my hotels. But I do think that travel is easier with a smartphone, but also making friends sometimes, like it right in real life, is easier without a phone. So it
yeah,
is about finding a balance now.
yeah,
It is about finding a balance and putting your phone down and just being like, do it the old-fashioned way and like ask a person for directions. It is
yeah,
so easy for us to just pull up Google Maps, which is sometimes I'm hot and I'm sweaty and I'm in a rush and that's what I'm going to do. But
yeah.
other times I could just ask a local person, hey, how do I get to XYZ? And they'll say, hey, like jump in the back of my like horse cart and I'll take you there, you know? You have these adventures or like hitchhiking in Bulgaria. Depends on where you're hitchhiking, but when I was in the Peace Corps, we would hitchhike all the time. And like those adventures, you know? So I love I love the convenience of and the safety that smartphones add. But also I do want to encourage people to not let it disconnect you from random connections.
Yeah. Well, and I think that's a really great point too, that that it's sometimes these moments of like putting yourself out there that are the richest moments of all. And we do have to be a little bit careful about like just doing things the fast and convenient way, because sometimes it's like purely the fact that something is inconvenient that it opens us up to so many adventures and opportunities and people that we meet. And I think yeah, it's always it. And I want to ask you this because we are talking about solo travel not being spooky, and we are talking about convenience, and we are talking about safety. And I think a lot of times we're given that story of like, when you travel, you have to put a lot of trust into other people, especially if you're not using the apps, asking someone for directions. They offer you a ride. If you choose to jump in or not, like these are all decisions that you have to make and trust. And I think a lot of times as women, we're really discouraged from trusting other people except for ourselves, and we're saying this is a safety conversation. So what's the balance for you? At what point are you saying, hey, we need to like be really careful and stay safe? And at what point do you say, sometimes you just have to kind of go with it and trust people? And like, where's your line there?
Yeah. I think as women, we are taught to be polite, to mind your manners. And I found that me being polite and wanting to mind my manners sometimes would get me in sticky situations where my intuition would be saying like, hey, this doesn't feel right. You could just leave right now. And then my logic brain would be like, you know what? You need to be polite. You need to, I don't know, just go with it. Just go with it. One time I was getting a massage in Korea from a guy that I just didn't like it. And I was like, but I'm just gonna stay. I don't want to cause a
Mm,
scene, yada yada yada. And now I've learned, and I put myself in another situation where I went into a massage parlor in Bangkok, and I'm walking towards the back, and I start noticing that everyone in there is a man, which is not normal. Even all the clientele are men, and I'm like, oh, like I'm in like a sexy massage parlor for men. And old me, real talk, old me would have been like, okay, don't be rude, just lay down naked for an hour and just like
oh,
get through it.
really?
Yes, I mean, old me would definitely have been like, we're just gonna do it,
Yeah.
because I don't want to be rude. New me is like, thank you so much. I actually, even though you've already washed my feet and I'm headed upstairs, I actually am realizing this isn't for me. Thank you so much. And I was able to leave that situation
Mm,
with grace. But
yeah.
if I wasn't able to leave it with grace, I would have flipped a table and left. Like,
Yeah.
I'm different now. So I think that our intuition will lead us way farther than we give it credit for. Way
Yeah.
farther. Because trust is a weird thing. Like at home, I mean, I live in Seattle and I want to trust everyone. But I also, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. But I think that what we can do for ourselves is put our boundaries and put our parameters around us, have some things that we don't shake on, and then leave some wiggle room in between. Know that you know, I carry my She's Birdie alarm all the time. I'm not sponsored, but I carry this all the time. And you yank it apart and it makes a big siren. And like I'll sleep with this in my hand. If I'm in like a sketchy place, I'll sleep with it in my hand. Um, I will, I have my 360 life, that 360 tracker app.
Oh,
It's a
yes, yes, yes.
tracker.
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
yeah. 360.
yeah.
I forgot what it's called. Yes.
Life
You can
life
like look wherever you
360.
are. Yes.
Yes. So like my, Emmy knows where I am at all times. So I have these safety things I put around these parameters. And
Yeah.
then afterwards, I leave it up to my intuition
Yeah.
and my mood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I think it's a great point that you can leave, you could, trust your voice. I think that's like such a really important piece of advice, but also you can leave a situation. You can say no gracefully. You don't have to say no gracefully. You can also just like scream and run the hell out of there. Like
Yes.
that's perfectly fine too if you feel like that's what you need to do. But also I think like as a middle ground for somebody who is used to being polite, who doesn't want to say no, there are ways that you can say, thank you so much. I really appreciate what you're doing, but I'm going to go. And that's okay to do too. You have to listen to your own voice.
Yeah.
Okay, we have a few minutes left. I want to make sure, so everyone who's watching, this is your little like yellow flag we're doing now, not red flag, yellow flag, which means we're going to end soon. So we want your questions in the comments. So questions that you have for Alexa, questions about solo travel. I keep waiting for my device to go off, but it's being really good to me right now. Whatever you want to know, drop them in the chat. We're going to do some open Q&A. But first, what I want to do is talk to you about, you've got the solo girls travel guides that you've been building over the years, and you also have this book. So let's start with like turning your travel into a professional career and how that actually got started for you.
So I started the Solo Girls Travel Guide in 2017, and it was, it was solving my own problem, kind of a two-part. So the first book I wrote was Bangkok, and I wrote this because I'm in Thailand, and by this point I'd been traveling for 6 years. So I have people messaging me all the time, being like, "Hey, I'm going to Thailand. Can you give me an itinerary? Hey, my cousin's going to Mexico. Do you have any tips? Hey, and I would type these itineraries, and I eventually was like, oh, screw it. Like these people could just buy the book, and I wrote a book, and I put that online, and I thought it was going to be just for, family and friends. No one's really going to read it, but it did well. So then I did a bigger one for Thailand and then Cambodia. So these books just grew, and they grew because I needed them as a solo female traveler too. I had been traveling for so long, and I felt like the other travel guide books didn't speak to what I needed. I had to learn lessons the hard way. And I was like, why didn't anyone tell me that, I needed to watch out for this, like child robbers in Cambodia? Like, why didn't anyone tell me that? And I also felt like, Lonely Planet books, I have so much respect for Lonely Planet, but for me, the way I was traveling, it didn't speak to it. So I started writing books that I would want, and turns out, so many other people wanted and needed them too. So it really is one of those solve your own problem, and you'll be solving it for thousands, turns out, of people around the world. And that's how that happened.
And you're right. I think as women, a lot of the stuff, I mean, we still look out there and look at who's on travel TV. It's still a lot of older white guys. Like that's just what it is, and these messages are still being very generic and not diversified at all. And I think there is so much to be known and to be talked about. So good on you. That's awesome. How many guides do you have now?
Oh man, I think we cover 12 destinations now.
That's awesome.
Yeah. And it's a lot. And Emmy has just moved to Spain. And so we're thinking about, covering, like she'll be covering parts of Europe. So it's growing. It's growing quite a bit.
Okay. And then tell us about the book. You've got a one-way ticket plan. It's beautiful, by the way. I hope you were just like, oh, so excited when you saw the cover, or like, I don't know, maybe there was the whole process, but it looks so great.
Thank you.
It came out when?
September 12th.
Okay, last month.
Yeah.
And what compelled you to, like, you've been like writing since 2017, and then you're like, I need to put this all together and do something for everyone.
Yeah.
What's the origin story on this?
Well, so I write Solo Girls Travel Guides. They're destination guides. So for Thailand and for Bali and for South Korea. And I would have all these readers coming to me with questions that didn't have to do with the destination. It was more questions like, Lexi, how have you been traveling this long? How do you afford it? Or they'd come to me with their fears or their worries. And I realized like there needs to be a how-to. So this book is a how-to. It's a travel how-to, self-help. a lot of spirituality in there. I'm
Mhm.
so proud of this book. It really teaches you how to get going, but it also teaches you how to make the most of when you're going. So there's chapters about love and dating. There's chapters about, happy days and hard days, how to deal with those hard days. There's chapters about making money, getting homesick, crime, theft. It really is my overarching everything. And the story of how it kind of happened was pretty crazy. I was I always knew that I wanted to write something like this. Like the need was there.
Yeah.
And I went to a healer in Bali, and the healer was like, "There's something in your head that you need to go home and write." So she's like, "Go home, put paper all around your room." So I got these huge pieces of paper and just put them all around my room. And over the next few months, all these ideas started spilling out. And I would be like in the kitchen cooking, and I would have this idea, and I'd run to my room and I'd write that in like chapter 12. Um, until one night I was in bed and I finally figured out like the piece of the book that like brought it all together. And yeah, so it really just happened from over time from such a magical place and such a need for it. And I'm so proud of it. And I swear this is the last time I'll say her name, but Emmy actually designed the cover. She like
Oh my
hand
God,
designed the
Emmy, way
cover.
to go. It looks so
I know.
good.
So this book is like, is the birth child of like me and her and all of our adventures and all of my background and kind of just weaving. It's just beautiful. I really imagine this book being the catalyst for so many people that want to go but are nervous to go, and then getting this book and realizing like, okay, here's step one, step two, step three, I can do it.
That's so great. And I cannot wait to be digging in myself. And I know the person who wins a copy today is going to have to tell us what they think and what they learned, because there's so many good, there's like maps in here, there's tool guides, there's little travel lessons and tidbits. I mean, it's like the whole package. So you must be so proud.
I am proud, very proud.
We have so many questions. So we got to dig in. And I'm going to start from the top because I think the first person to ask a question should get that recognition. So JJL wants to know, there's so much curiosity about house sitting. Everyone's like, how do you do it? How do you sign up? Where do you get those gigs from? I know you talk about it in the book. Can you give us a couple of teasers now?
Yes. So when I first started house sitting, I was writing kind of like a house sitting, I don't know, profile of myself in Facebook groups. It's like expats in Belize or, whatever. And I got a lot of house sitting gigs that way. But some of them were not as fantastic as they like, put themselves out to be. So now I use a website called Trusted House Sitters, and that they have reviews, they have background checks. I love Trusted House Sitters. So I would start there.
That is great. I've heard very good things about trusted house sitters. So I think that's really good advice. Liz wants to know, how were you able to thrive without the stability of a steady, consistent job?
I went in between steady and not steady. So, for example, teaching English in South Korea, that's a 1 year contract. I have a house, I have insurance, I have a routine, and then I'd take that money and then I'd go play with it, and I would travel around, and then I'd find, a 3 month, gig working on an island, and then I would say, "Oh, running out of money, I gotta go do it again," and I'd go teach again, or I'd get another work trade, until eventually I was like, I can do this by myself. So I eventually, while I was house sitting, transitioned. Actually, no, that was before. I was teaching English, and I was kind of getting tired of the steady, consistent thing.
Hmm.
And so I went to freelancing and I started writing freelance gigs. And then I went to house sitting and used this opportunity of not paying rent to build my freelance portfolio, and just kind of built my career from there. So I went from steady to unsteady a lot until I made my own steady.
Did you always have a backup plan of some kind, or were you ever like,
No way.
were
Never.
you ever like worried that you're not going to make the finances
Oh,
work?
yes, of course, but like that's then that you get the scrappiest. it's then that like I talk about this in my book. I met a boy on a bus in Malaysia. He's British. We were both in Bangkok, like, we're running out of money. What are we gonna do? And then we decided to move to Taiwan and teach English for a year. So we signed a lease together after just knowing each other for 2 weeks. But we were like, we got to figure out something. And hell yeah, we did. Like, that was so fun to be young and to have no responsibilities. And your only responsibility is to like figure it out for the next few months. So fun.
Yeah.
I wish that more young people were just like figuring it out as we go. Because I think that wanting to have everything figured out is so natural for us that once you take yourself out of there, there's a lot of magic that comes out of you. You realize how creative you are, and you also realize that you can never fail. You might not be in the spot you thought you were, but you can never fail. There are opportunities out there everywhere, everywhere, if you
I
just want to be creative enough to find them.
I think that's so great. And I think one other thing that I want to add to what you said is because to the point of trusted house sitters. So trusted house sitters, the concept of this is it's a website that you can join and you can sign up to house sit for people. A lot of those people have pets. It's usually like you're helping take care of somebody's pet. But the other thing is, because I was talking to them a few weeks ago and they were saying, how many people in your community do you think would like want to travel and take care of somebody's pet? And I said, the other thing you should be thinking about here is people like me who feel locked in because they do have an apartment or a mortgage, something, and don't feel like they can travel. And like, that's the other side of the trusted house sitters is you can also, if you are somebody who's saying, I have a couple of like things in my basket here, I have a mortgage, I don't have the luxury to travel the world, you can actually have somebody else do a trusted house sitters for you, and stay in your place and take care of your pets and so that then you are free to go and travel. So I think that that's like a really important part of it too, is that there are ways to sort of free yourself up, even if you're not like young and spry like we used to be when we first
Yeah.
started traveling alone.
Yeah, you don't have to pack everything up and leave forever. Like
Totally.
you can just go for a little while. Yeah, you're right. I love trusted house sitters
I
from
want
all
to
angles.
totally. And let's add, there's another great question that kind of is a good follow-up for Liz's question here, which is from Priyanka over on LinkedIn. She says, can you talk about finding work on the road in different places or a job that allows flexibility? So you talked about finding, teaching English opportunities. Where were you going? How were you finding these opportunities when you traveled?
Um, a lot of them are like job boards. So
Mm,
there's teaching job boards. That's how I would find all my teaching jobs. But jobs that allow for like flexibility, all of my jobs I would find on Upwork.com. So I was a freelance writer. I worked for like a dog food company. I wrote for like a dog food blog. I wrote for like a dating blog. I wrote for a doomsday prepper blog. And those were just like fun things that held me over. But um, I would also find jobs on Upwork that were like, I was a travel planner for this like rich Canadian tech CEO. So I did that for a while. Um, there's so many, we are in like the remote world now. So there's so many ways to use online to find remote jobs. Um, yeah, does that answer the question?
yeah, I think
Yeah.
so. No, and I think that's a great point. I know there was somebody who came up to me after an event one time a few years ago, and he was like, but what kind of job can you have? And I was like, honestly, the answer to that question is so different nowadays than it was before, because before maybe the only things you could do, and I'm saying before, like, before maybe 20 years ago, the
Mhm.
only things you could do were like teaching overseas or, working locally somewhere. But now, like, you might have a 9 to 5 and you're able to do it remotely and you're just working the time zones while you travel.
Yeah.
And, so like there might be ways that you can still have this like very, traditional job, but still be able to travel because you've created like a more flexible workflow and you
Mhm.
have like more opportunities to just use technology.
Yeah, and a lot of people are just taking the jobs they have now and going remote. There's a company called Remote Year, and they encourage remote work, obviously, but they help you pitch to your company, like to let you travel remotely with that company. So even the bigger companies are becoming more flexible and realizing that this is what people want. People want to be able to take their laptop and work, from Spain or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. We've got a question from your best gal here, Emmy. She wants to know, what's the biggest lesson solo travel has left you?
Oh, goodness. Beth, you go first.
Um, there's so many. I don't know. I think for me, to the point of like, there's so much anxiety in the beginning of, am I going to do this right? Am I going to like, miss the bus, whatever. And just the realization that everyone, so let me explain this in a different way. When I first started traveling with my daughter, which I know is not solo travel, but kind of is when you're like the parent and your daughter's like 6 months old. It sure feels like it.
It's a new realm.
And like we would try to figure out what to pack, like, okay, she's going to need diapers. She's going to need a travel bassinet. She's going to need a stroller. She's going to need all these things. And then you get to a place and you realize like, oh my God, this place has babies too. Why was I so stressed out about this? Like, it's almost like sometimes you forget when you're planning on traveling that you think you're going to like go into space where there's like no resources anywhere. And I think one of the biggest things that I always remind myself is there are regular people living basic, regular, everyday lives everywhere. So when you're thinking about packing, don't stress too much about feeling like, oh, did I bring the right thing or the wrong thing? If you brought the wrong thing, you can always, buy it or acquire it or find out some other solution when you get there. If you feel like you don't know enough about a place, you can still learn about that place while you're there, on the way or on the plane. Like humans exist everywhere and they can be really helpful just like they can in your own home. And even though it's an unknown place, it's not unknown to everybody. It's just unknown to you. And I think when I travel alone, those lessons become even more resounding for me because you do kind of at once feel like I'm by myself, but at the same time, you're very immersed in somebody else's everyday life. And you realize that very up close and personally.
Oh, that's so perfect. I mean, I'm never gonna forget, like, they have babies everywhere. They have
Yeah.
babies everywhere.
There's babies here too. Yeah.
There's babies everywhere. I was going to say the same thing about packing. I tell people like with all this packing, I'm the worst packer. Like my boyfriend makes fun of me every time I go on a trip. I'm the worst packer because I really do believe all you really need is a passport, credit card, a good pair of shoes, and a backpack. And if you forget something, you will find it on the other side of the world in like the most random places as well. My biggest lesson is the less things you have, the more free you are. So if you have a big heavy suitcase that you're going to have to rely on someone to help you carry it around, you're not free. So backpack life till the day I die is my biggest freedom tip.
I love that. But you're right. I mean, if you think that you have to have everything with you, then you're limiting yourself. I think you're just like that stress is limiting you. And I saw this comment come in, which I think is hilarious. Traveling with a child is traveling solo on steroids. I love it. Thank you so much, Jules. But no, I mean, I remember once there was a woman who went on a wonderful trip and no shame to her at all. I totally understand. We all have experiences like this. She traveled and she brought an entire suitcase filled top to bottom with granola bars. And it wasn't because of an eating, dietary restriction. It was because she was so afraid that she wasn't going to like the food when she went to a place. And I think about that a lot because I think, again, like to this point of packing or to this point of everyone lives this regular life where they are, it's like we can get ourselves so worked up about the unknown of maybe this is not going to be a good experience, or maybe I'm going to just prepare everything I can. I'm going to bring it with me from home and then I'm going to go. But then like you miss out on all those really good local snacks that you don't get to eat at home. That's like, the best parts, local snacks. Yes. So
Yeah.
I think like it's okay to I don't want to say under prepare, but sometimes it's okay to under prepare.
Because then you have to figure it out as you go, which again is like the biggest gift. And it will roll over into your day-to-day life. Is like, I figured it out on the other side of the world. I can figure it out at home. It makes life easier at home.
Yeah. Totally. And then, right. And then you go home and you realize, wow, all the stuff that I didn't actually need. And I can translate it into my own day-to-day life too. I love that. Okay, we have, oh my gosh, so little time and so many good questions in here. How about, let's talk about, there's two questions here that are about destination. So let's talk about, Jenny asked, what destination is top of your solo bucket list? And JJ also added to that one, what are the top 3 places you'd like to go on that you haven't been to yet? So what is, what's like one of the best places that you've ever traveled alone? I'm modifying all of this. And then what's one place that you haven't been to yet that you'd love to go visit?
Oh, goodness. Vietnam is one of my favorite places for traveling alone. It's just so wild, but there is a clear travel path if you want to stay on it. They have a hop on, hop off bus. It makes you feel like you know the destination you're going to, but at the same time, Vietnam is so rooted in tradition and history that it makes you feel like, you're really off the beaten path even when you're on it. So Vietnam for solo travelers is a big one.
Love.
Bucket list. Spain is on the top of my bucket list. I've always wanted to go. I've always wanted to go to
You have
Spain. I
visa
will
to
not
go
be.
now.
What? I
You have
know.
to go now. Yeah.
I know. Emmy's there.
You're here.
I will not be going to Ibiza. I am not interested in Ibiza. I want to be going to like the off the beaten path where I have to struggle through Spanish. And I've been to Italy, but I only went for a short trip. I was living in Bulgaria and flew over for New Year's, and I really want to solo it through Italy. I'm a big fan of like the concept of hitchhiking, and I want to do more hitchhiking. And I think that I could do a lot of good hitchhiking in Spain and Italy.
That's great. Those are great answers. And we're throwing a couple comments on here that are like, JJL was like Barcelona, and Jenny has this great insider tip. You can get great things for gifts at a grocery store for a fraction of the cost of a gift shop like Lava Salt in Iceland, which I think is really great.
That's exactly what I say, Jenny. I say like to bring home souvenirs, go to the gift shop and get what the locals eat. Get the local snacks, the local spices, the local booze, the local skincare. Yeah,
yep, all at
smart.
the store. Okay, let's do one more question, and then we're going to do a giveaway, and then we'll break. But and I'm compiling questions again because a few people are dying to know about this process of writing a book. So on LinkedIn, we have, love your story of writing your ideas on large paper hanging on your walls. Brilliant. Can you share your insight, advice about publishing, getting for a novice who wants to get their ideas into a book? And I know there was another one in here too, where someone was asking like, oh yeah, Stacy had asked, did you self-publish? Like, how did you actually get this book? So tell us a little bit more about the process of writing a book.
Okay, so what's interesting about my journey is that the Solo Girls Travel Guide at the moment has been all self-published. So I just went on YouTube and I figured out how to self-publish Solo Girls Travel Guide. The problem with Solo Girls Travel Guide is that, with self-publishing, your reach can only go so far with distribution. So the one-way ticket plan is traditionally published. So I had you have to do a big book proposal. Mine was like 80 pages long. And then got an agent, and then the agent gets the publisher, and Beth knows about this too. So if you are, it just depends. Both have positives and negatives. I would say just look up how to make a book proposal. It is nice to have an agent and an editor to really help you through the process, and a distributor. That's really nice. But if you can't hook one, there are books that do well self-published. Gabrielle Stone, she has a book called Eat, Pray, FML, and that book has done very well, and it was first self-published. And then I believe that a publisher did eventually buy the book. Both routes are great, and I get this question so often. I think I want to do more on it, like more guidance on it. Feel free to reach out to me for that. But yeah,
that's your next book. Have you thought about a next book? I know it's like so early because this one.
Yeah. Oh, my wall has papers on it.
Yeah.
My wall has papers on it. I'm doing it again. I'm like doing the same process again. So yeah, I've got another book coming.
Well, see, you too, everyone can still recover after like all the work of writing a book. It's so much work. So I'm impressed that you're even like thinking about it now.
Well, yeah, I mean, I don't have kids at home, like you, it's coming from you like I'm just so impressed with you and all you're doing. But yeah, I mean, it's what's on the top of my head. And at some point as a writer, you can't help but want to get that out. It's like
Totally.
ringing in your head.
It's so cathartic too, the writing process.
It is.
And in the comments, our wonderful, wonderful team member, Rebecca, just dropped in for anyone who is interested in the process of book publishing. That's actually one of our upcoming events at Wonderful. So we just dropped the link in there. I had so many questions too, because for anyone who's not aware, I also have a book coming out in the spring. And I got so many questions on it that I was like, I reached out to my literary agent and my editor, and I was like, do you guys want to just do a panel discussion on like how to do it? And so, yeah, so in November, we're going to do a conversation called How to Land a Book Deal. So everyone come and join. But it's a process, but it feels really good too, to like get those words out on paper. It's different from, I think, like just, for us, Wonderful started as a travel blog. Like it feels very different from blogging. It's like really a different process, but really rewarding at the same time.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I think we're ready to pick our winner. So I'm going to pop this up on the screen again to remind you all, we have a copy of the one-way ticket plan, Find and Fund Your Purpose While Traveling the World. We have, I believe, a winner that has been picked in the back. Thank you everyone for your comments, for your ideas, advice. It's been really cool to have this conversation with all of you across social channels. And what I'll also say is if you don't win, there is hope for you yet. You can go to, I have people going to your website, Alexa. I don't know if that's the best place or if you want somewhere else.
Perfect.
Alexa-west.com is going to take you to her website. You can download and get access to all of the 12 plus guides that she has for different places that you're traveling to. And you can buy a copy of this book. So check it out. But we have, and Jules says, it's a great book. You've got fans in here. So love it. All right. So the winner is, drum roll, please. Jenny, you won. Woo. So Jenny, what we want you to do is, and we'll drop it in the chat too, send an email to us. It's team@sheswonderful.com. We'll put it in the comments. Go ahead and send us an email. Say, I was the person who won. We'll get a book sent over to you. I hope you enjoy. Oh, here's Jenny responding. Woo! So good. But, and then the rest of you, remember, go get your copy of your book so you can read it and you can get all of these experiences and ideas and details. I know so many people were asking in the comments for details. So you get them all. We're not going to give all of them to you now because you got to read the book in order to get them. So that's kind of how it works. So let's do that. Alexa, thank you so much for joining us today. It was so nice to chat with you.
Thank you. And thanks for everyone that showed up and was a part of our fun chat. This was really nice.
Everyone for coming. You'll get a follow-up email with links and resources. Safe, wonderful travels to everyone. I hope you have some amazing adventures ahead, and we'll talk next time. Bye for now, everyone. Bye.